Let's just dive right into this explainer because we're about to uncover something absolutely wild about the songs you listen to every single day. We are going to explore how the physical formats of the past, specifically the 45 RPM single and the 33 1/3 LP, literally engineered the creation, the consumption, and the massive cultural impact of the music we all love.
I mean, think about it for a second. Did your favorite artist actually craft that perfect 3-minute pop hit out of pure, unadulterated inspiration? Or did a literal piece of plastic dictate it for them? What's really fascinating here is this illusion of choice. You see, musicians didn't just naturally gravitate toward writing these concise, punchy pop songs. No, they were actively forced into it by the strict physical constraints of plastic discs and the needles that tracked them. So to really understand how this all went down, we actually have to travel back to the late 1940s to a conflict famously known as the Battle of the Speeds. This showdown pitted two completely different philosophies right against each other. On one side, you had the high-energy, youth-driven, super loud burst of the 45 RPM single, and on the other, the slower, narrative-driven, much more expansive 33 1/3 long-playing record, which we all know as the LP. Section 1. The Battle of the Speeds. A war over formats. Okay, so this story really kicks off when the music industry launched a totally accidental war over the very definition of what a musical work even was. Now, before the 1940s, records were made out of this heavy, super brittle stuff called shellac, which was actually derived from insect resin. But following World War II material shortages, record companies were scrambling for synthetic alternatives. So in 1948, Columbia Records unveils the Vinylite Microgroove LP. Not wanting to license their biggest rival's technology, RCA Victor hit back hard the very next year in 1949 with their own format, the 7-inch 45 RPM single. And man, you can so clearly see the technical and cultural split between these two just by looking at how they were built. The LP spun at 33 1/3 RPM, right? So it offered over 20 minutes of music per side. That was heavily marketed towards adults who wanted to sit back and listen to uninterrupted classical symphonies or big Broadway shows. The 45, on the flip side, offered maybe 5 minutes tops. And you know that massive, iconic 1.5-inch center hole? That wasn't just for looks. It was specifically engineered for quick-release automatic record changers, absolutely perfect for teenagers stacking records in their bedrooms or feeding the jukebox at the local diner. Section 2. Engineering pop hits, physical constraints. So how exactly did these formats engineer the pop music formula we know today? Well, the 45 wasn't just a tiny record. It was a literal marvel of mathematics. RCA actually used advanced calculus to mathematically prove that a constant speed disc sounds its absolute best when the inner recorded diameter is exactly half of the outer recorded diameter. Because of this, the optimized 7-inch disc demanded a highly concentrated, best-foot-forward burst of musical perfection. I mean, you didn't have time for a long, moody acoustic intro. You had to hook the listener instantly. Which brings us to a huge question. Exactly how much music could you squeeze onto one of these 45s? The magic number is 7 minutes and 11 seconds. The legendary producer George Martin famously calculated this as the absolute physical limit for the Beatles. If a song was even a second longer than 7 minutes and 11 seconds, the record's grooves would have to be cut so unbelievably thin that they would physically break the automatic changers in homes and jukeboxes. And guess what? That is exactly why the Beatles' epic masterpiece Hey Jude fades out right at that precise mark. Wild, right? But it wasn't just about time. There was a literal sonic battle going on too. Because it spun so much faster, the 45 was actually technically superior for high-frequency audio when you compared it to the LP. This meant disc mastering engineers could cut the records hotter, which is industry speak for louder, and way more heavily modulated. These records were physically engineered to just blast out of AM radios as vibrantly as possible. This effectively kickstarted the music industry's infamous loudness wars, where raw sonic impact became your absolute best promotional strategy. Section 3. Rise of the Album, the Expanded Canvas. Now, over on the LP side of things, that expanded canvas was birthing an entirely different artistic movement. The LP's massive 20-plus minute capacity finally allowed musicians to stretch their legs. So instead of just cranking out 3-minute hooks, artists started crafting complex narratives, huge multi-movement suites, and sweeping overarching themes. This is what gave rise to the legendary concept album. It completely transformed popular music from what was seen as a disposable teen commodity into a critically validated art form. I mean, we're talking about albums like the Beatles' S.G. Pepper or Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon, works that became such massive cultural touchstones that they are literally studied by universities today. And you know, this format war didn't just stay in the record stores, it completely split the airwaves. AM radio, led by iconic DJs like Alan Freed, relied entirely on the rapid-fire, high-rotation hits of the 45 RPM single just to keep those teen audiences hooked. But then you had FM radio. Because FM offered much better audio fidelity, it emerged as this incredibly cool free-form space. FM DJs would actually sit there and play entire album sides straight through. They were catering to an older, maybe slightly more patient audience who deeply valued artistic continuity and really wanted to experience the full journey of an LP.
Section 4. Track placement, a hidden formula. Have you ever noticed a specific pattern in the order of the songs on your favorite records? Well, it turns out that isn't random either. Record companies were strategically engineering your entire listening experience. They knew that consumers would go into a record store and sample the first few tracks before committing to buy, so they developed this absolutely brilliant formula. Track 1, that's your big statement piece, designed to grab your attention immediately. Track 2 is usually the second radio hit to keep you hooked. Then track 3 became the ultimate sweet spot for an enduring single. And track 4? That was deliberately used as a sort of experimental palate cleanser, just to reset your ears before you went on the rest of the album journey. But here is where it gets really crazy. This sequencing wasn't just a psychological trick. It was highly physical, all because of a pesky little phenomenon called inner groove distortion. See, because the physical length of the groove per second of music actually shrinks as the needle gets closer and closer to the center label, the audio quality naturally degrades, and you start losing high-frequency details. So to hide this physical flaw, audio engineers would deliberately place their mellower, quieter, and less bass-heavy songs all the way at the very end of each side of the record. Talk about a workaround.
Section 5. Vinyl Renaissance, a modern comeback.
So you might be wondering, how does a literal analog format battle from the 1940s possibly matter to us today, especially when literally every song ever recorded is instantly available right on our phones? Well, we are actually living in a really fascinating mixed ecology right now. Yes, streaming absolutely commands the lion's share, taking up roughly 76% of modern revenue. But vinyl? Vinyl has made a shocking, massive comeback. It generated a staggering $1.4 billion last year alone. Vinyl now makes up 8% of total revenue, completely crushing CDs and just dominating the physical media space.
On top of that, these old formats have essentially become invaluable historical artifacts on the collector's market. Like, get this. Obscure, low-production 1960s Northern Soul 45s have sold for as much as $37,000. And if you think that's wild, a first pressing of the Beatles' White Album that was actually owned by Ringo Starr went for $790,000. It's just insane. But it really proves a point. Today's superfans still desperately crave a tactile, engaging, and physical piece of art so they can directly connect with the musicians they love. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. In an era where our digital playlists have become completely endless, completely algorithm-driven, and honestly sometimes a little overwhelming, we continually find ourselves drawn back to the physical formats of the past. And why is that? Maybe it's because true artistic magic, the kind of magic that literally shapes generations, is so often found right there, inside the beautiful constraints of a needle in a groove.